Hi, my name is Kara, and it's another week of works in progress and finished objects. So I think this week was pretty productive. I had two 6 to 7 hour long car rides to just do uninterrupted knitting. So that's the trip from LA to San Francisco and San Francisco to LA, which is why I'm a little bit late here because I just did a weekend trip, so I couldn't really film on Sunday. I was in the car mostly. But I really love those trips just because I have nothing to do but knit, and I usually find an audiobook or just listen to music and vibe. And I really should use that time to pattern edit because there's no distractions, but nope. I usually just knit the entire time, and I always pack enough yarn to finish the entire project because I usually finish projects on those trips and it's pretty fun. And yeah, for anybody who's in California, I usually take the 5, so it's a little bit scenic, but honestly at this point, I used to do that drive oh my gosh, at least 6 times a year, so I've gotten pretty used to it. And honestly, part of the drive for the trip to LA to San Francisco was in the dark, so there's nothing to look at, and I just turned on the lamp and I just knit the entire time. But San Francisco was so fun. I got to go to my favorite yarn store, which officially is the Fire Braid yarn store in the Haight District, and I just love the selection of colors that they have. I was trying to describe to my mom what makes a yarn store somebody's favorite, and I was well, it's kind of like a yarn store has a certain taste to it, and it's more if your taste aligns with the owners or whoever's buying the yarn. And I just think that the Firebird yarn store is more aligned to my taste than any other yarn store that I've been to. And I really had to control myself because I have so much yarn, and I've been getting really into hand dyed DK, Aran, and worsted weight yarns, which is really fun for me, but I just don't have the space for it, and I just gotta keep in mind that I'm gonna be moving soon, so I'm gonna have to go through and organize my entire yarn stash soon, and I'm planning to film that. So I'm gonna go through whatever I have left in my yarn stash and just kind of figure out what I want to sell, what I want to keep. I can't keep anything by the end of the summer, but what I want to keep to knit with through the rest of summer, because I was also telling my mom this, that I don't really plan to move to New York until September-ish, so I have a few months or a few weeks at least of chunky knitting, and I'm so excited for that because I really love knitting with super chunky yarns. It goes so quickly, it's so fun. I love the colors of super bulky yarn, and just kind of going back to my roots. Okay, but without further delay, let's get into it. So first I have this, I don't know what to call this one. It's an unnamed lace stitch-ish sweater that I have going on, and this is what I've been working on for the past few hours just because I got super into it, and I always get hypnotized by top-down sweaters, and it is top-down. And it's similar to the green one that I worked on last week, which I also finished, but I'll show that to you in a second. So there's this really fun eyelet stitch going on, there's really nice subtle striped holes, I guess. But what I'm most excited about is the yarn choice here. And so I gave it a little white collar, but I am holding together some Kindred Red DK yarn in crystalline. I think that's what the colorway is, but I'm holding it with 4 strands of mohair. So I have a purple Knitting for Olive mohair, some undyed mohair that I found. It's definitely undyed because I went through a phase in my knitting career where I would just buy a bunch of undyed yarn, which was really fun. And so it's nice for me now because I just have a lot of blank yarn to hold with others. So some white one, some We Are Knitters pink mohair, and oh, I have one more. The Wandering Flock mohair in Moonrise. And this looks really small, but I promise I have more. I just kind of wound it up strangely, so it broke into a smaller skein. So I'm gonna go through the little one first before I get to the big one. But it's so pretty. And it's just knitting up into this really, really, really beautiful color. The light's kind of fading now because it's post sunset or about to be sunset and it's overcast, but the colors all together really remind me of Monet's water lilies, and it's just so pretty, and I'm really happy. And I think honestly this sweater is just making it so that I want to knit a sweater on 15mm needles but with 8 strands of mohair, because it just flies by, and it's really fun. But yeah, I strongly anticipate making a lot of progress on this one tonight because 2 hours ago-ish, I was just at the collar, and then I was ooh, let's pick this project up again. And then it's just been flying off my needles. And I chose most of the mohairs kind of randomly. I was this yarn by Kindred Red I really love, but it became out a lot more saturated than I thought it would be because I pre-ordered it online and then it came. and I was like, whoa, these colors are really bright. Like, it might be kind of hard to work with because I'm not the knitter that really likes to use hand-dyed yarns that are like super blocky, I guess. Or like the color blocks are like the changes aren't subtle, they're like harsh. I don't know if that's the right word, but like they're much more abrupt that I would prefer to work with. So then holding a bunch of mohair with it would help soften those changes, and I really like how it's coming out. Like, now that I think about it, it kind of looks like a surreal sweater that I made in January, where I made it with, I think, the colorway Cuttlefish from Qing Fibre Melted Baby Suri Cuttlefish held double. And it's very similar looking, but this is different yarn. So it has a little bit more structure than that one because the DK gives it a little more structure, but like it has the same fluffiness because I am holding 4 strands of mohair together. Okay, the next one I want to show you is the finished version of that other sweater. It's another unnamed lace sweater, and this is what the purple one's going to look like when it's done, hopefully. But it's really fun to see how the texture of the stitch changes based on the yarn that you're using. So this is Cascade Yarns 128 Superwash in apple green, and so it's plied, it's bulky, and it has really great stitch definition. But like, I think that the purple one has pretty good stitch definition as well. It's just a little more subtle. And I'm really excited to see what it looks like once I finish it and get it off these tiny needles, or like at least separate the stitches for the sleeves from the body just to give it a little more room, because right now it's really bunched up. But right now I've just been like super into really cropped but big wide sleeve sweaters, and sweaters aren't great for summer, I'll admit it, but honestly, like if I lived in San Francisco, they'd be perfect year round, because I was in the city this summer, or sorry, I was in the city this weekend, and it literally was like 51 to 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was like, wow, it's almost the end of July and it is freezing every time I go outside. So like, honestly, like the sweaters that I brought with me were too lightweight for San Francisco. But yeah, really happy with how this turned out. I think that I just need to block it. I think the yarn is starting to grow on me because I was a little bit thrown off because it is a little bit thinner than the bulky yarns that I like to work with. But it's definitely growing on me. It creates a slightly lighter texture. I think that I still prefer the slightly bulkier bulky yarns, the ones that have more of like a 1-to-1 ratio of like 100 grams to 100 meters, and this one's 100 grams to 120 meters. But I'm gonna block it and see how it stretches out, because I know that with bulky yarns, it stretches out quite a bit, and I learned that with my corn sweaters recently, which again should have been expected, but like I'm not very good at, or I'm not very experienced at blocking. I have another finished object for you, and it is this other unnamed lace sweater, and it's very like 80s vibe. I really love this lace stitch that I found, and it's with 2 strands of Feeling Good yarn from Wool and the Gang in Ivory White. I was gonna start saying Ivory White at once. And yeah, it really does give like very 80s vibes. And I started this one like 2 weeks ago, but I finished most of it in the car ride to San Francisco. And because I was like kind of distracted, I was like listening to an audiobook at the same time, like I got off way too many stitches for like the neckline of the front. And it was kind of going to be like a boat neck until like I was like, no, this isn't the type of sweater that I want. Like I don't want a boat neck for this one. And so I kind of had to go in and do some like sketchy seaming. Like I used a 3-needle bind off on like this part of the sleeve, but then I literally just used like the mattress stitch up here to make the neckline a little bit smaller. But you can't really tell me when you actually wear it. So yeah. And I'm just like looking forward to making another one of these. I am planning to write a pattern and probably include it in my next pattern drop, but I'm kind of taking my time with this one because I do need to finish like the second pieces for my summer drop part 2. And there's quite a lot of patterns for me to redo, but I'm having a lot of fun trying to figure out what yarn to use. But yes, very 80s vibes, and I'm kind of wondering now, like, if I was strongly influenced by, like, the knitwear in Fargo, like the original movie, which I think was actually in the 90s, but it seems very 80s to me. But, like, I remember watching it and just thinking that the main character's wife just had, like, awesome knitwear, and it was very 80s to me. And there wasn't a sweater in there that like specifically like looked like this, but like I watched the movie pretty recently. I'm looking at like my pile of projects right now, and I think I have like way more finished objects this week than I do like whips. And I think it's because like I was stressed last week about like finishing all these seconds for my summer drop part 2. And so like I just wouldn't let myself start anything new because I was like, nope, you gotta finish this project. You started it, you gotta finish it. And that was kind of stressful, and I got most of it done. But I'm just pretty excited to kind of freeform everything and just be like, yeah, I want to start this project. I'm just gonna do it. And I can do that because I have a few weeks in between like pattern release deadlines. The next one I have for you, and you're probably pretty familiar with it from my feeds because I've been obsessed with it, is my Harry Styles inspired sweater. And I detailed an entire process of how I made this because this sweater is quite the journey. But it's made in Hip Knit Shop Fluff in baby blues. And it's the most like beautiful baby blue. I wish I had worn this one more in San Francisco because the weather was really cold, but it was super bright and sunny, and like this yarn in the light is just like amazing. But it's kind of holy for that. So it's definitely more of like a spring, like beginning of fall sweater. Like, I'm now gonna say that like there's probably no such thing as like a summer sweater, at least like not in LA. Like summer tanks for sure, but like not a summer sweater. For anybody who lives in like colder weather right now, like I am jealous because I wish I could wear my knitwear more. But I love this sweater. I did make a few mistakes, but I am planning to make a pattern for it, and I've already kind of started my second one. And I'm hoping the pattern grading for this one isn't gonna be too difficult, but it could be. So I think I'm just gonna have to like knit a second one and write the pattern as I go, because I think that's like the only way that I could write this pattern, because the stitch is kind of tricky. And like I'm just trying to also detail like my process of like how I fixed my mistakes and like how I just got better at the stitch, because it did take a lot of practice. And like I don't want people who knit this sweater to have to do like almost like an entire sweater's worth of like practice before they can feel comfortable to actually knit their sweater. So I'm trying to learn from my mistakes and help teach people how to knit this sweater based on the mistakes that I made. But yes, the next whip that I have for you is actually the start of that second sweater. When I say start, I mean literally the start. Like I just started the cable cast on, and then I kind of got distracted. But I decided to make it in the Sandnes Garn Borstet Alpakka in Jelly Bean Green. And I really, really, really love this yarn, and I'm really excited to work with it. And I'm not sure if it has like this same like sheen in the light because it's brushed alpaca, so it doesn't really have that like silk to give it that like shininess. But I'm hoping that like it's like the fluffiness and that it looks good with the stitch, because I did knit a little gauge swatch. But wish me luck on this one. Okay, so you might recognize this one from a few weeks ago, but I finally finished the Drop It Like It's Hot cardigan, my second one, and it's made in Juniper Moon Farms Beatrix in the colorway gold. Not gold, definitely more of like a pastel tangerine, but I really love it. And I do have a bunch left over to make a top. But very happy with how it turned out. I think that this yarn is like, it's really fun because it does show the stitch definition. And I think my friend Hollis did say, like when she first saw this sweater, I was like, oh, it's kind of like barnacles. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It does look like barnacles. And I think like in this type of yarn, it really does look even more like barnacles. Or maybe like it just always looks like barnacles. But I don't really know what color barnacles are in nature. But it's cropped. It's fun. I don't know why I took so long to make this. I definitely watched like a lot of the Terminator movies with my friends from college, like when I made this, because they visited this past week, and we just like watched the first 4 Terminator movies like in 24 hours, and it was so fun. And I think I was just like finished the sleeves to Terminator 2. I think it was Terminator 2. But I am still trying to brainstorm a way to incorporate the stitch into a top, because I do want to make a Drop It Like It's Hot top. But I'm finding it difficult to like make a top, or like think of a top that like isn't like super see-through, because it's not like that see-through, the stitch, but like it's see-through enough where like I probably wouldn't want to make it into a top unless like it was super clear that you could wear something underneath it, because I'm impractical in a lot of ways, but I do want to make like a somewhat practical top. I have another whip for you in Borstet Alpakka, and this time it's in Bubblegum Pink, I think. It's really fun. And it's my V-neck top that I showed you the green version of it last week, and I'll put a picture like here so you can picture what it's going to look like, because right now it's literally the bottom, and so like you can't picture what it's going to be because I haven't done like any of the shaping yet, but it's unnamed. And I don't know what I'm going to call this pattern. And honestly, I think that might be like my least favorite part about like writing patterns, is like thinking about names for everything, because I make a lot of patterns and coming up with that many puns or just like that many names is like a big block to me for some reason. And I like really procrastinate on it, and then like I won't put up the Ravelry pages, and like I forget to make the group chats just because I'm like, oh, like I want to like send people like the name for the top or like the sweater, and then I can't think of anything immediately, so then I just go like, I'll do it later, and then it's like 2 weeks later and I really need to make a name for it, but I don't know. But basically, I have never made one of these tops with Borstet Alpakka. I usually make it in 2 strands of Melted Baby Suri held together. And the reason why is because I was like, oh, you have to hold 2 strands of the Borstet Alpakka together. Like, I don't really know. But then I looked at the yardage, and it's actually like 50 grams per 110 meters. And in my head, for some reason, it was 50 grams per 150 meters. Then I was like, well, why haven't I been using this like single-stranded? So here we are, and this is single-stranded. And it is slightly more see-through, I'd say, than like the Melted Baby Suri held double. But I think it's definitely doable to wear as a top. And like I normally wear like a bralette underneath these tops anyways, so it's slightly more see-through, but nothing that's like too crazy. But I am excited to be using the Borstet Alpakka in my patterns a little bit more, because like this isn't the first time that I've ever used it, but I think it's been a bit underutilized by me, because I do love the Qing Fibre Melted Baby Suri. I have an entire shelf of it, but it is pretty expensive and it is hand dyed, so like it's a bit expensive for people, but it's also like not everybody's wanting to use hand dyed yarns all the times, because like I know that I for sure, like it took me some time to get used to like using hand dyed yarns and just like figuring out how I want to work it into like my style. So I think that the Borstet Alpakka or the brushed alpaca is going to be like a great alternative, and hopefully I'll use it more in the future. Next, I have my other LA road trip project, and it's this unnamed lace sweater. It's top down. It has a crew neck. It's like a cute little short ribbing. It's in wool in the Gang Alpachino Merino and Bubblegum Pink. And I don't know, I've just been super into lace knitting and like top down sweaters, so I decided to combine it once again in a new sweater. And I am planning to write a pattern for it. I'm trying to figure out what yarn to make it in, because I've been kind of in that mood of like worsted, DK, or Aran weight yarn with like a bunch of mohair held with it. So I'm just trying to like figure out like how much yarn I need for it to make another one. And this one was actually so stressful because like I thought I didn't have enough yarn, and I literally had like 2 inches left of the last sleeve to get through, and I was like, I don't have enough yarn, I have to order more. And then when I got home, I actually found a full skein that was just kind of buried in the back of my yarn stash, and I was able to finish it. And so I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I'm excited to basically just make another one in a different yarn, because I really love Alpachino Merino and I love the feel of it. But I'm excited to just explore with more yarns, because like I'm gotten like too comfortable with Alpachino Merino. Like it's a fun bulky weight yarn, but like I've just used it a bunch and I want to explore more yarns. Now I have a Let's Groove sweater, which is on the way. I think this is about like a medium or large, just because I like wanted it to be more oversized than the one that I originally made. And I've made a lot of progress since I last showed you guys this sweater. I mean, I had to undo everything that I showed you last time because I found that mistake, but I kind of got into the groove of knitting this sweater, so it's kind of just flying off my needles, and like I actually think I would have made a lot more progress with it if I hadn't gotten distracted by this other top-down sweater that I'm working on. But it's in 2 strands of Knit Picks Wonderfluff in Cosmopolitan, and I just love how this yarn knits up. Like, I love the color of this sweater. have the, oh, it's inside out, but I have the flip side top. And this is in 2 strands of slub yarn and 1 strand of Melted Baby Suri, just because I was exploring and trying out like slub yarn. And it's all Qing Fibre in the colorway Wolpertiger, which is a mythical creature, somewhere between like a rabbit and a deer, I think. I think I talked about this last time, but it has a color of Alpachino Merino in ivory white. And I was just experimenting basically, like I wanted to see what 2 strands of slub and a fluffy yarn looked like held together. And I like how it looks. I just think that the colors are a little bit more pale than I would normally wear. I'm not really sure. Like, I really do love the colorway, but like when I put it on, it's more like, I don't know what I would wear it with. Like maybe white pants. Ooh, maybe a skirt. But like the colorway is like, the light's kind of fading, but it's really pretty. It has like subtle hints of like kind of mint blue, pink, a little bit of orange. Like I really like the colorway. And I'm really excited to knit with this yarn more. But something about it, like when I just like finished the top, I think that I just like am chasing after that like super duper like thick and thin yarn that I made this top in the first time. And this is somewhere in between like the first and the second one that I made. Like the first one that I ever made was like kind of super crazy texture. The second one that I made was more about like, it was a neutral piece. And this one's like kind of fun texture, a little bit more subtle and not so neutral, but like a pastel enough color that like it isn't like super saturated like I usually wear. Like I like the top. I just don't think I'm gonna keep this one for that long. And speaking of that yarn that I made that first flip side top in, I have finished the body of this like improvised like sort of Bennie sweater that I've been working on, and it's in trendsetter yarn spessotille in saffron. And I got super far in this project and that like I finished the body, but now I'm just stuck because like I don't know if I want to make it long sleeve or short sleeve, and I don't know which side I want to be facing out. But this is what it looks like with the right side facing out. And then with the wrong side facing out, you kind of get more of like the bumps. So this is what it looks like with the bumps facing out. And I have a bunch of this yarn, so I could just make 2. But basically I've just been like, I can't make a decision, so I'm not gonna work on it, even though it'll probably take me like 20 more minutes. Okay, my final finished object for you this week is this Valerie sweater. And sleeves inside out, but it's made in Cascade Yarns 128 Superwash in bright Cobalt. I like how it turned out. I think that I kind of wish that the color was a little bit more saturated, because I don't know if this is a blue that I would normally wear, because I think I would normally wear a slightly deeper, more saturated blue or a more pastel blue, but this is somewhere in between for me. So I don't really see myself wearing this that much. And I do like how it turned out. And I do like the yarn. I just wish that I had a brighter color, I think. Because I either want this sweater to be like super duper bright, or I want this sweater to be kind of neutral to go with like everything. And this is a bit too much in between for me. Okay, and I know you guys have been waiting all week. No, you haven't, but I have finally decided what my first crochet pattern will be. And it's going to be the Adena cardigan by Mrs. Moon Heaven? Mrs. Moon in Heaven? I don't know, I already bought the pattern though. And I have the yarn, and I was literally in the yarn shop like trying to figure out like how much yarn I needed, and I was like going back and forth between all these different colors, and I finally decided on this Seismic yarn Erin in Princess Party. And the light's kind of fading, but it's so pretty, and it's like kind of somewhere like a mix of like pastels and neons. So I'm really excited to see it worked out, because I think that the texture of this cardigan's really, really sick. And I'm a little nervous because it is technically like a comfortable / advanced beginner pattern, and obviously I've never knit anything, crocheted any pattern before, and I've literally made like 1 crochet piece. So I think there's going to be a lot of YouTubing and Googling with this pattern, but hopefully I will stick with it because this yarn is so gorgeous. and I'll be so motivated to finish it. But yeah, I chose this pattern mostly because like I saw it all over my Instagram feed and I was like, I love this, I love this, I love this. But it's also because it's knit on, I think, slightly bigger yarn than other crochet patterns. Like, it's supposed to be worsted weight, but I just found this Aran weight. And in my head, they're pretty much the same thing. But it's also like crocheted on 6mm hooks, or a 6mm hook. Sorry, I'm like used to saying like knitting terms with like plurals. So hopefully it'll go pretty quickly and I won't be like, ugh, lose motivation and just like leave it to die. But I'm really hoping to motivate myself with this like really pretty yarn. But yeah, that's everything that I have for you this week. A lot more finished objects than whips, just because like I had a deadline of like releasing patterns and I had to finish my second so that like I could find any typos. But I'm predicting that next week will be a lot more like whip leaning, hopefully, as I kind of freeform everything. But thank you so much for sticking with me. Hope you have a lovely rest of your week. Happy knitting and see ya.